For donations, I ask that you donate $1 per video. Thank you. Eric and Jonathan followed closely behind Aoki and Aogi as they trotted on their horses towards the city of Kai, as it had the same name as its realm, to meet the Emperor Dai. Eric and Jonathan laughing almost the entire way, and Aoki looking back at them as a way to scold them, while Aogi simply smiled at their happiness. They were excited to join, he supposed. And if they proved themselves worthy to do so, then they would, of course, because Dai was accepting of more foreigners, though he doubted they had any experience with a katana, as neither of them even carried a blade. They were Lorenites, too, the religion that most of the people in the city of Lorne followed, though there were a few other religions practiced there, Aoki and Aogi knew, but it did not matter to either the two Ya believers, which is what religion Aoki and Aogi practiced, as did all in their realm, as no other religion was tolerated except for some foreigners who rarely visited. As it turned out, Eric and Jonathan were traders of silk, and so they bought silk from Akai traders on the port mainly, and their religious practice was permitted. What they were doing so far inland, Aoki suspiciously did not know, but Aogi suggested that perhaps they were here to seek them out, as they said. Aoki was not so sure, but remained silent over the matter, so as not to arise suspicion from the new travel companions. After the 2 days had expired and their travels were done, they arrived in Akai, where they first encountered children playing along the streets happily, and a long river running down the center of the two roads, which led near the Emperor's palace, the pathway on the right being the pathway which Aoki, Aogi, Eric, and Jonathan took to reach its courtyard. Upon arriving inside the courtyard, they were greeted by two women, the sisters of the Emperor Dai, Mei and Emma. They were the same height and size and looked very similar to one another, though one had reddish hair while the other had black hair. They each had dark eyes, nearly black, like the Emperor, who was a tall man with a large black beard and stocky frame and size. Aoki looked forward to seeing him again, while Aogi, who had consulted him the last time they were in Akai, was not sure whether or not he would be greeted so fairly. Nonetheless, the two sisters brought them into the palace. Aoki turned to look at Eric and Jonathan. You two will stay here, he said. Eric was ready to protest, but Aoki put up a hand to silence him. Stay here, he said, more loudly, as if speaking to a feral dog. Aogi put a hand on Aoki's shoulder and pushed him lightly into the palace behind Mei and Emma. Aoki turned to walk next to him, and each of them soon found themselves before the Emperor, who was in a state of mind that Aoki could only describe as mad. The man stared off into the distance, stroking his beard, his eyes fixed with a terrible scorn, his mouth hanging open slightly as he spoke words to himself that no one else could understand. He is not well, Mei explained. We do not know what to do with him. He has been speaking with this object all day, every day for a year now. He hardly ever comes out. He doesn't eat very much. Aoki put up a hand again. What object? Aogi looked at Emma, who seemed to know something by keeping quiet. What do you know, Emma? He asked. She looked down at her feet and then back up to him shyly. He calls it the sphere. Is it a sphere then? Aogi asked. Some sort of ball? It's very small, she whispered. He holds it now. Aogi recognized it too. Aoki and Aogi looked over to Dai. He had his hand held up in front of his eyes. He was staring at something small and white, a small spherical object that glowed red and then blue, and then other colors as well. Aoki did not know what to make of it. What does it do? He asked Emma. She was quiet. Hey, Dai shouted to Aoki. Leave my palace. Aoki approached him, Aogi alongside him but behind him. The Emperor grumbled something to himself as they approached. What? He shouted at them. Aoki put up a hand again to silence the man. What is this sphere that you hold? What does it do? Dai did not answer, but instead only continued to stare at it, his mouth wide open. Aoki held out his hand. "Hand it to me, Dai." Aogi nodded. "Give it to him." Dai did not look at them, yet continued to stare at the sphere, and then something strange began to happen. "What the?" Aoki began to say as the room had changed from the palace hall to a common house with Fusuma moving in and out, opening and closing. It was familiar to Aoki, his old home in childhood, but before it had all been taken away. "What is this?" he growled. Aoki recognized it too, as they had grown up together, and his family had taken Aoki in after he had lost his parents to a fire. "This is your home," Aogi said, "from childhood, do you remember?" "This is an illusion," Aoki said. "Dai has gone mad. The sphere is a curse." Dai began to laugh, but Aoki and Aogi could not spot him and did not know of his location, but supposed he was sitting on his stone throne, watching them attempt to escape their nightmare. Aoki, baring his teeth, shouted, "Let me out!" And suddenly, the house began to catch fire. They soon ran outside quickly in an attempt to escape.